I believe in the law.
So you're a law and order guy.
Well, I mean, yeah. If we don't have rules, what you got? Chaos.
I have to ask. Donald Trump was just found guilty of fraud, $385 million.
So
Law and order.
I'm not electing a priest.
I know, but does that bother you that he was found guilty of that, being a law and order person?
Well, compared to what?
I'm saying he did a thing that was very illegal. He owes hundreds of millions of dollars. You're a law and order guy. Does that bother you?
Well, I mean, is he the only one that's ever did that?
I didn't say he's the only one who ever did that.
Okay, I know that. That's a loaded question.
Well, it seems A to B. If you really value law and order, but Trump is guilty of crimes, does it bother you that Trump, your guy, did a fraud that is costing him nearly $400 million?
Well, it bothers me, but it ain't going to deter my vote, sir. I still vote for him. If he had 21 million felonies, I'm voting for him. I believe in the law.
So you're a law and order guy.
He believed in the law, and if he had 21 million felonies, he'd still support him. How about that? But this is, again, what you get from the cult following of the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president who, remember, as he brought out there, was also found guilty of massive business fraud, found guilty of, by a civil jury anyway, of sexually assaulting a woman, bragged about being able to grab women by their private parts, bragged about being able to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue or Park Avenue without repercussions. Law and order. Austin says loaded question versus unloaded brains. Oh yeah, the brain was never loaded, right? This morning, welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And this morning, lots is going on. West Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the parish there has been given the green light by the U.S. Supreme Court to split up and allow white residents to create what amounts to an all-white city, electing their own mayor and city council, etc., etc. Police department. We'll talk about that this morning. And of course, the aforementioned wannabe dictator has claimed that America has been anti-white. Yesterday, he said it's a fact that America has been anti-white. So again, it gives you insight to what's to come in November when you hear, and maybe y'all get tired of me saying this, but when you hear a Stephen A. Smith spout off, or Charlemagne spout off, an Ice Cube or a Snoop Dogg or whomever with the platforms, Killer Mikes, when they spout off, they think they're the exception because they have a platform and a little extra money. None of that is going to matter with this guy. None of that. None of that at all. I mean, why do you think like you got other very wealthy, even white guys, fighting against Trump? I mean, they are afraid. And not only do they have the privilege, but they have the money and everything else. I mean, we're talking about Steven Spielberg, Robert De Niro, and we can go down the list. They're afraid as well. And check this out. After Portugal's president, does it remind you of the U.S. in any way? After the president of Portugal offered a formal apology for that country's role, its major role in the slave trade, the right-wing government blasted him for suggesting reparation payments. They didn't even want him to make the apology. We'll talk about that this morning as well. And Alicia Keys is in the news for a really, really great reason. Some may have heard about, some may have seen. Well, actually, I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah, it's the pre-run. But nonetheless, her Hell's Kitchen, which I am taking in today, has grabbed 13 Tony nominations, including Best Musical. Gonna review it today. Should be a good show. 13 nominations, the most by any other musical this year. So 13 Tony nominations, including Best Musical. We're gonna talk about Alicia Keys this morning. Like I said, Alicia Keys, I went to a concert last year and she kind of a little surprised in a good way, in a real good way. Southbound 3000 chimes in, beware of those in sheep clothing. And so deep-seated racial and economic tensions will be present in the new chapter of Baton Rouge's history because the Louisiana Supreme Court made a historic decision to approve the creation of the city of St. George. The decision follows a protracted legal battle initiated by rich white residents seeking to carve out their own municipality from the broader cityscape. They cite, among other things, crime, public safety.
Corporation has never been about decision. It's rather been a testament to the resilience and unity of our community. Throughout this entire process, we have listened to the voices of our residents, honoring their aspirations and concerns alike. As we embark on this new chapter, we do so with a shared vision of unity and cooperation. We envision a community built on family and faith. We recognize that our strength lies in our diversity, and it's through dialogue and collaboration that we will build a bright future for generations to come for East Baton Rouge Parish. So this journey towards incorporation has never been about division.
Yeah, it is. America is in trouble. The world is in trouble. This is 4 years after George Floyd, this so-called racial reckoning. Now, this move basically came down to the fact that in Baton Rouge, in that part of Baton Rouge especially, African Americans are something like 52% of the population, and white residents are 37%. And the white resident says, because we live among the Black folks, it's horrible. We can't raise our kids around them. We can't poison their minds with our racism. I mean, it has all the earmarks of America's dark history of racial segregation, which preserves the economic advantages and social dominance of white folks. Of course, the politically powerful who have utilized legal and societal barriers to maintain their elite status over other communities. Y'all remember Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, an African-American student protested segregation by sitting at a drugstore lunch counter designated for whites only. Demonstrators staged that famous protest at the Woolworth store in New York in 1960 to denounce segregation. I mean, this we can go on and on. 1921, racial segregation, pervasive worldwide among mixed race communities. It just, it takes us back to where the segregation of Black and white individuals in public spaces was legally sanctioned under the Jim Crow laws from the 1800s to the 1950s. And then there was the civil rights movement to dismantle racial segregation. Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. And now here we are. Here we are 60 years later. And the genesis of St. George goes back 15 years. They've been trying to do this for 15 years. And Mr. Durrett is chiming in. I'm taking it live from Aruba. He says, so they get to put up a wall to keep blacks out. This is crazy to even think this can be done. Well, and that's the thing. So pay attention. Pay attention. Because that's the thing that we keep hearing, and folks got to stop. I understand the question. I understand the statement. They're showing you better than they can tell you that these things can be and will be done despite what had been in place, certain laws that have been in place. It's no longer what, you can't be incredulous over what they're doing today, led by the MAGA king. And yes, Power 96 says the white flag is nothing new in Louisiana. St. George is 70% white. They couldn't handle a black female mayor. And so, Quinn, it is crazy. As we talked some months ago about what was happening in Jackson, Mississippi, with the black mayor, black city council. The state government decided to go in there and essentially create a separate justice system for white folks and take over rule of that overwhelming majority black city. And so Power 96 notes that three other parishes or three other communities used to be in Orleans Parish. Oh, gosh. They left that parish because of too many black people. And so these things are happening. So my point is, understand that when you're thinking that it can't be done, particularly when it comes to things related to race, it can be done. They're showing they have a Supreme Court that might be the most racially insensitive, or dare I say racist, Supreme Court that the U.S. have had since the Jim Crow era. And three of them were put there by the MAGA king. And it was all for these type of purposes. And when that dude says he's going to get in and be a dictator and never leave, and he's put all these mechanisms in place, most importantly the Supreme Court, and all of the state level election workers, all of the state level secretaries of state, they're not going to deny this guy this time. There won't need to be an insurrection this time at the Capitol. The insurrection has been happening since the Capitol, since before the Capitol. And it just, on January 6th, it just got openly violent on a plot of land that was considered by those folks as sacred. That is the U.S. House, the Congress, Capitol Hill. And then as we get into Mr. Austin, Trump spelled everything out in detail in a brand new interview with Time Magazine. And first of all, before we get into that Time Magazine issue, he faced a modicum of legal repercussions yesterday. Judge held him in contempt, in criminal contempt, for violating the gag order through post on his Truth Social platform. Judge Juan Merchan delivered the ruling, but we say Malcolm, he found them to have violated the gag order 9 times. So he says, I'm going to fine you $1,000 for each violation. And of course, folks like the guy we saw at the beginning of this program that Greer played that interview, they will probably pay it for him. Folks like him. But if you violate, just think about that for a second, Stephen A. Smith, who wants to compare the plight of Trump to the plight of Black folks. If you violate a court order one time, there's a good possibility you're getting locked up. The judge from the bench told Trump he violated it 9 times. And then after really issuing a fine that amounted to, as if you ever watched the Honeymooners back in the day, where Ralph Crandon would say, a mere bag of shells. The gag order has been in place since April 1st. So there's no excuse. And he's exploited it. And also, so there's also this. If you're on trial for anything, whether it's, even if it's civil, and in this case it's criminal, it's a criminal trial, and there are eyewitnesses that the prosecution is going to call, and you try to intimidate them, you attack them in any way, that's also immediate jail. There's no way around it. Well, part of him violating the gag order was his attacks on 2 major witnesses in that trial. The porn star in which he allegedly had the extramarital affair with, Stormy Daniels, and his former lawyer, Michael Cohen. And he attacked them, of course, on his Truth Social and on television. That is quite the affront to the court. So once again, let's not buy into or tolerate a Stephen A. Smith equating Trump's plight to the historic plight of African Americans. It is such an insult. ESPN should have fired him. I'd say go that far. Hate calling for somebody's job, but they should have fired him. It is that offensive. It is that egregious. They should have fired him. Even the prosecutor said, the prosecutor believes that Chris Conroy believes that Donald Trump will continue to push the boundaries because he really wants them to put him in jail. He believes that Trump will use that for political purposes. And naturally, let's make no mistake, and there's been a lot of talk about this, if he is put in jail for a day or a weekend or whatever, it's not going to be Rikers Island. It's not going to be anything close to Rikers Island. And he will have inside the jail Secret Service protection. He will have a nice bed, television, etc., etc. So it's all junk. So he's going to get on me and Stephen A. Smith right now. He says, ask Stephen A. what Black man can violate a gag order 9 times and remain free. He is the reason why the Knicks will lose. Yeah, we're disgusted this morning. The game was over and then it wasn't. The series was over and then it wasn't. We're disgusted this morning. But nonetheless, getting back to the Time magazine article. The dude's number one said, and again, he is no longer hiding behind dog whistles or anything like that. He said that he's tired of this country's anti-white agenda and attitude. The country has become anti-white, and he vows to do something about it. He also criticized the pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses, expressing concerns that, even comparing them, he says that this is worse than January 6th. Of course, he calls those people who are locked up hostages, and many of the 1,300 or so who either who've been punished, because not all of them went to prison. Many of them pleaded guilty. And as Greer is noting, she says, what I don't understand is how Black people and others who publicly defend Trump justify supporting him with these kinds of statements. Right. And so he says this whole country is up in arms, breaking into colleges. They took over a building. Of course, he is like Biden said at the White House Correspondents Association's dinner. He says, Biden says, I'm a grown man running against a 6-year-old, because he can't even articulate what's going on there, breaking into colleges. That's not what's happening. That is far from what's happening. And he goes on to say this: if we don't win, well, he was asked about violence, about a insurrection, another insurrection, if he were to somehow lose the election in November. And he goes, if we don't win, it depends. It depends, he says. He says it always depends on the fairness of the election. Now, this is a guy, and you talk about the irony of ironies. Carrie Lake, you remember Carrie Lake? She tried to pull a Trump. She did pull a Trump, claiming her loss in Arizona was she didn't really lose. She asked for all these recounts. She sued. She refused. She never conceded. And it's interesting. Trump and his people started complaining that she was at Mar-a-Lago too much. She'd be at all of the events and all of the gatherings there at Trump's place down in Florida, hanging out. And he wanted to get rid of her. This is just recently. And the irony of ironies is that Trump told his people that, she really lost her election. She didn't win. And here we are almost 4 years after his defeat by more than 7 million votes to Joe Biden. He's never conceded. But he's tired of it. So they constantly turn on their own. And somehow these people still embrace this guy. Ron DeSantis said famously last year that he couldn't understand why folks kissed the ring of Trump. He couldn't understand how, and he didn't name them, but he had to be talking about people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, how he essentially disses them in the worst way. And then they still kiss the ring. Well, Ron DeSantis apparently kissed the ring the other day. Met with Trump and kissed and made up. These people know what, as much as you hear the left or the Democrats say, this is what's at stake. Those people know what's at stake too. They know what's at stake for them. their total autonomy over this country. That's what in their minds is at stake. And so here we are. This guy tells Time Magazine that he expects, or it depends on how the election turns out, but there could be violence. He keeps saying that there could. So in some other speeches, he said there will be violence. He's called on his supporters to protest at the courthouse in a massive way. However, there's been at most 15, 20 folks come out support, with Trump signs supporting him, which is interesting. But this is what Make America Great Again was all about in 2016. For those who it's a catchy slogan. No, it was an obvious slogan. If you've been paying attention to anything, but here we are, the front runner, the presumptive GOP nominee, who by the time the trial comes around will perhaps be a convicted felon. By the time the election comes around, could very well be a convicted felon. If he's convicted on these charges in New York, he could face up to 4 years in prison. However, the New York case is not the case in which you would expect him to be jailed upon conviction. It is a case in which prosecutors will certainly ask for jail time, but the judge has so much leeway in a case like this in which he can do probation. Power 96 says, "Where are the Black conservatives? That Time Magazine didn't say anything about them." Yeah, they have not woken from their stupor. I'd like to think that if I'm that oblivious, I may have been drinking or something for too much. If I'm that oblivious, but they have not. I still get, for some odd reason, these emails from this Black conservative Trump supporting columnist Raynard Jackson with his articles that continues to attack, no matter how he couches it, continues to attack the intelligence of African Americans and Latinos and other minority groups in this country. And Raynard is a Black guy. And he continues to do so. He continues to spin everything that Trump and his folks do. And I'm sure that his statements to Time Magazine, this interview, I'm sure Raynard will have, at some point, my email will ping, and he will have a spin to that. It's one thing to support someone. And again, like I always say, that cover politics, don't get involved. But if you're covering, or if you're supporting someone, it's like a family member, right? If you support a family, if they're doing something so egregious, you got to call them out. You can't keep supporting something that's going to destroy humanity as you know it. You got to call it out. Power 96 says Raynard needs an intervention. Trump goes on with impunity, and no matter what he does. So when a person so people hear this show, and we have to say this. It's like, if he he's done so much harm. He's threatening to wreak havoc, particularly on people of color and women. He's done so much of that if there is, and I don't know where it is, somebody, I'll point it out and I'll bring it out. If there is a modicum of goodness in that guy, that he's done anything good, let me know. And don't come at me with, what is that, prison reform thing? What do they call it? What was the name of that legislation? That wasn't him. That was, he did, yes, he signed it. The First Step Act. He signed it. But it began in the rooms of the Congressional Black Caucus. And they did, and as much as it pains me to give this person any credit, they did get a lot of help from Kim Kardashian on that, who incidentally met with Vice President Harris last week to talk about things like prison and criminal justice reform, among other things. They sat at the round table there at the White House and discussed. But that First Step Act, which still, it's an interesting because they call it First Step. It's a first step. It's supposed to be. And I was talking to Hakeem Jeffries, the Senate. I was going to say Senate minority, the congressional leader, Democratic leader in Congress. And as he said, it was a first step. It was supposed to be a first step of other stuff. You know, you take a first step, then a second, et cetera, et cetera. But that was a Congressional Black Caucus creation, as they tried desperately to get more robust reform through. This is what Trump, would sign and settle for. As Power 96 says, the First Step Act and funding HBCUs is a myth from Donald Trump. In fact, with the billions of student loan forgiveness, the current president, Biden, has again done it again. He's announced another wave of forgiveness, and this time for students of the arts. So they continue to do exactly the opposite of Donald Trump, bringing relief to people who really need it, who deserve it. In the wake of Portugal's President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa's acknowledgement of his country's role in committing crimes during the transatlantic slave trade and the colonial era, the Portuguese government has dismissed calls for reparations. The president's assertion during an event for foreign correspondents that Portugal should pay the cost, and this is a quote, he said they should pay the costs for slavery and other colonial era atrocities. Well, the government met those comments. They oppose, vividly oppose those comments. Portugal, maybe some may not know, is a nation with the most prolonged historical involvement in the slave trade among European countries. And campaigners have long been pushing that nation to address its legacy. And for example, between the 15th and 19th centuries, nearly 6 million Africans were transported across the Atlantic on Portuguese vessels. I mean, they had to endure unimaginable suffering as they were enslaved and exploited on plantations, primarily in Brazil. Now, the new center-right coalition government said it has no plans for reparations. They didn't even want him to issue an apology. Instead, it claims that they are going to focus on deepening international cooperation and fostering reconciliation among people. They said that the president's remarks on reparations amounted to almost treason. How is that? How is that? But that is, again, that's Portuguese right wing or MAGAs. The MAGA party leader there, guy named Andre Ventura, said that the president's apology and statement toward reparations was a betrayal. Sounds familiar, because America, we know, has totally refused to offer any type of tangible apologies, really, and of course reparations. All we hear is studying it. Some institutions, the Catholic Church and some schools like Georgetown University, they have apologized, and Georgetown has set up a program in their own reparations way. Here in the U.S., of course, there's been constant talk of reparations. We've talked about it on this program. Different states, different municipalities. Remember in 2015 when President Obama commemorated the ratification of the 13th Amendment? And for those who don't know, the 13th Amendment banned the practice of slavery, of enslaving folks. Obama at the time said the question of slavery was never simply about civil rights. It was about the meaning of America, the kind of country we wanted to be. And in 2008, going back before Obama's comments, which did not even then include a formal apology from a U.S. president. But go back to 2008, it looked like America's government or lawmakers were taking a step toward doing something tangible by way of reparations. Tennessee at the time, Democratic Rep Steve Cohen did issue a symbolic apology on behalf of Congress. And of course, we know that came decades, was it John Conyers? Decades after the first time we got H.R. 40, this bill to study reparations. And it still hasn't moved. It still hasn't moved. Sheila Jackson Lee had been working hard to get that passed. She said the framework of our country, or for our country, this is a quote from Sheila Jackson Lee, for our country, in the document to which we all take an oath, describes African Americans as 3/5 a person. And I said, stop right there, because that's the other thing. They take an oath to protect the Constitution. Makes you wonder. As she pointed out, that Constitution says that it still says African Americans are 3/5 a person. So how do you take an oath on that? She goes on to say the infamous Dred Scott decision of the United States Supreme Court, issued just a few decades later, describes slaves as private property, unworthy of citizenship. In a civil war that produced the largest death toll of American fighters in any conflict in our history, could not prevent the indignities of Jim Crow, the fire holes at lunch counters, and the systemic and institutional discrimination that would follow for a century after the end of the Civil War. She says the mythology built around the Civil War, that victory by the North eradicated slavery and all its vestiges throughout our nation, has obscured our discussions of the impact of chattel slavery and made it difficult to have a national dialogue on how to fully account for its place in American history and public policy. America has never, we talk about reparations, they have not had a head of state. So even President Clinton, at one point, he was trying to do that, and I guess didn't get any support. But America has apologized for stuff like dropping the bomb. They've apologized for stuff like they've apologized. They reached out to Japan and pushed them to apologize to China for making Chinese women sex slaves during World War II. They've, of course, reached out and have been instrumental in Jewish people receiving reparations for the Holocaust. They've done all of that and more, but they've never had a head of state sit before America or stand before America, be it in the Oval Office, which would be the place, one ideal place to do it, or during a State of the Union address, or heck, even during a White House Correspondents Association's dinner. Stand up and say, as President of the United States, I formally apologize for the atrocities committed against African Americans. Formally apologize to you, the descendants. Formally apologize for Jim Crow and making your life as miserable or as hard as possible. Making it difficult for African Americans to go to school, making it difficult for them to work and get fair wages, making it difficult and taking away any most hope for creating generational wealth. I mean, we can spend a lot of time on that, but not one U.S. president. I mean, we have America that have this fascination, probably understandably so. Oh, he was a bit before my time, but they have this fascination with John F. Kennedy, who certainly was not an enemy of minorities. But he never stood up and said, America, we need to apologize. We had Bill Clinton, who, Black folks love Bill Clinton. Many remember that he had that running moniker, first Black president. Never apologized. And the real first Black president. Really, Obama was like any other politician. He used political words, couched them carefully, and omitted the most important word, which is apology or apologize. And as Power 96 says, you in Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, you can get a state holiday to honor Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. And And at the same time, what are they doing? They're taking away they took away affirmative action, dismantling DE&I. We talk about the Fearless Fund and trying to help Black women. They've made sure to put a stop to that. And we talked about the United Negro College Fund. They must be feeling the heat. We have a problem, America. We have a problem. Black America, Latino America, LGBTQ Americans. It's real now. The heat has never been turned up more. And that goes back to civil rights. This is a new civil rights era. But is anybody really fighting like they did in the 50s and 60s? Is anybody really fighting? Or is everybody for themselves? That's what it feels more like that. It feels more like that. Because I don't know, and maybe somebody can tell me, but I don't know that that in the 60s and the 50s, in the heart and the height of the movement, that you had folks like a Stephen A. Smith who had platforms, who had followings that was able to espouse such self-hate. I know that we didn't have all of this, the internet and digital stuff. But was there outspoken? I mean, I'm sure there were, as was during slavery, there were Blacks and minorities who did the bidding of the master. I'm sure during the 60s, there were Blacks and minorities who did the bidding of the George Wallaces and others of his ilk. But was there a Stephen A. Smith or all these other guys that we talk about who basically grabbed the bullhorn and did the bidding of the enemy? Mike V says, look up Governor Hancock of Massachusetts, the first governor to pay reparations to his formerly enslaved Africans in 1783 after slavery was abolished in Boston. That's the framework. John Hancock was the Jeff Bezos of slavery. He ran a marketplace for goods produced by slaves and controlled supply chain logistics, says Mike V. That's a good analogy. So it's really interesting. So on a lighter note, much lighter note, so I got this invite to see and review Hell's Kitchen, a musical inspired by Alicia Keys' teenage years in New York City, which has won, or been nominated for, I should say, 13 Tony nominations. So it really focuses on Alicia Keys' pre-celebrity life. And Big Sis says she got her tickets. Yes, well, we will. It comes at a good time because after last night's debacle across the street over there at the world's most famous arena, we needed something. So it's perfect timing here. It's perfect timing. Hell's Kitchen was nominated for, along with Best Musical, was nominated for Best Book of a Musical, Best Direction, and Best Choreography. It also nominated for Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role in a Musical, Best Performance by an Actor in a Feature Role in a Musical. Malaya Joy Moon is the actress, and Brandon Victor Dixon is the actor. And so this it's interesting to see a pop star, and Alicia Keys is a young woman. To see a pop star, a young pop star, have her life, it's not her entire life. This only Hell's Kitchen tackles her growing up. And but it's still interesting. I think I remember after Fantasia won American Idol, there was a Lifetime movie about her, which I thought, wow, Lifetime movie. She's just getting started. But this should be interesting. So we will see. And by the way, I don't know if Denise is watching this morning, but Anthony Tillman, Misha Green, and Brenda Seiler, and yours truly, the four of us are your 2023 Maryland, DC, or MDCC. Is it right? Yeah, MDCC award winners. And Denise will be at a luncheon on Friday to accept the awards on our behalf. So I'm proud to say that it's the first time in 2 years that I won an award for journalism. Great work by, of course, Misha, the manager of the Washington Informer, Brenda Seiler. It's interesting because Brenda is the one who generally covers things like Hell's Kitchen. And I had offered her, I get information on Broadway stuff, and I had sent her something if she was interested in covering it. And she's actually the one who sent me the Hell's Kitchen thing. And I told the folks there that, yeah, I would go ahead and cover it. And because I know my wife is a big Alicia Keys fan, so we're gonna go see it. And Anthony, of course, is tremendous social media and photographer. Anthony, Johnny on the spot during that bridge collapse in Baltimore a month or so ago. But the four of us have won honors for our work in 2023. And Denise, she did call me and ask me did I want her to buy me a ticket, but only after the producer of her Win TV show called me and said Denise will not be able to do her show on Friday. And what better person to fill in than you? So I'll be filling in for Denise. I'll be Denise Rolock Barnes on Friday at noon on Win TV, hosting for her. Isn't that something? So while she's collecting my award, I'm sitting in her chair and doing Win TV on Friday at noon. You can catch Win TV on the Washington Informer's social media platforms. Same here, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever else Chevy is going to take us. But yes, Friday at noon Eastern time. So, but keep watching. Let it be known. Subscribe. Now you have a freshly minted award winner as the host of Let It Be Known now. So, Power 96 says on, and thank you, Angela Connolly. She says, congratulations. Power 96 would not say congratulations to me, but he does remind me that on a lighter note, Bobby Brown cut up on stage last night. He had to help him with his dance moves. I hope you're going to tell us next that there's video of you on stage with Bobby Brown, because I can't think of a better duo to light up a cruise ship on stage than Power 96 and the one and only King of R&B, Bobby Brown. That should be great. Yeah, I know he's out there with Tom Joyner, Power 96. He's out there cruising with Tom Joyner. I didn't even realize Tom Joyner was still doing that. But great. He says it's a Hennessy party. So you go, boy. On the stage with Bobby Brown. We got to see the video, Greer. We got to see the video. He's got to provide us the video so we can show the world Power 96's moves with Bobby Brown. I hope you're a little bit looser than Bobby. Bobby don't need to do it anymore. He just dance. Bobby can sing. He can still sing, but Greer says she's looking for it now. Power 96 hasn't put it out there yet. Greer. Because look, I bet he's what is it? He's humping around with Bobby Brown. There you go. Well, thanks again. Again, watch subscribe, I should say, to our YouTube page at LIBK/news or -news, and hit the subscribe button, share it, and tell us what you think. And like I said, if there's a topic that we have not covered or we don't normally cover and you would like to see us cover it, let us know. We listen to you. We really do. And watch if you choose to, if you have time. He says pay-per-view. Power 96 says the video will be pay-per-view. It figures, just like Freaknik. Watch Friday at noon. I'll be hosting Win TV. So thanks for watching. Let it be known. We'll see you again tomorrow.